Hello and welcome back to the Adventures in Marketing podcast. My name is Gwen Montoya. I am your host of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your first time, I hope you learned something new. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining me. If you have been here before, thank you for coming back. I love hearing that my podcast episodes have helped you, so please keep that up. It's fantastic. I love doing these episodes. I love doing this podcast, so thank you so much for everybody who sends me really sweet notes and messages. I really appreciate it. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about Instagram. Now, if you know me very well, especially if you are a member of my Adventures in Marketing group, you know that I do not love Instagram. It is my least favorite platform. However, I know that I need to be there, and it makes a lot of sense for me to be there. This may not be true for your business, but it does make sense for mine, and it makes sense for a lot of other businesses. But there's a lot of changes that have been going on with Instagram, and you might be feeling frustrated. So what I wanted to do today was kind of just take a moment to think about Instagram and maybe even do a little bit of rethinking, right? Like, marketing strategy is always changing. Social media platforms are always evolving. And if you are stuck using old strategy, old best practices, and you are not staying current, you're not going to be getting as much out of it as you could be. And I like to make marketing not scary. So the last thing I want you to do is spend more time being frustrated around your marketing. So the more I can help you streamline it, make it easy, make it not scary, that's what I want to do. So like I said, Instagram has been changing, and depending on how long you've been using Instagram, you may not be cool with these changes. These may seem like new changes to you. They may seem kind of out of the blue. So I want to give a really quick rundown of how Instagram has changed just over the 5 or 6 years, right? So when Instagram started in, I think, 2010, it was literally just a photo sharing app, and the photos had to be square. That was it. Over time, it added filters, it added messaging options, and then the hashtags, of course. It also added Instagram TV, which was a thing that's not really a thing anymore. It gave us the ability to add more than one photo to a static post, which is kind of like what we call carousel posts today. It also added stories, it added Instagram lives, it added reels, it added being able to have a link in your story, which for a long time you could only do if you had 10,000 followers. Now almost anybody can have a link in your story, which is fantastic. And the newest thing that they are doing is, going back to a chronological feed, or at least giving you the option to somewhat experiment with it. It's limited, but that's a thing that they're doing. They are now, thinking about expanding it to the TikTok style where it's the full screen, it's the full tall view instead of the square apps or the square photos. So if you thought that this was all too much and that Instagram keeps changing, you are not wrong. You are not alone. There are others out there like you. And I want to talk today about how we navigate Instagram the way that it is now and how to use it for your business. So where are we today? Where are we today with Instagram? What is the best way to use it? I like to think of Instagram as 3 separate products, and then there's like some minor sub products within those products. But I think if you think about Instagram as the feed, the main feed, the one that we're all really familiar with, those static photos, although sometimes you can have a little video, but for the most part, I'm just talking about the photos by themselves, right? That's one product by Instagram. Another product is the stories, which last for only 24 hours, and then they disappear, right? And then the third one is Reels, which some people love, some people hate, some people are very frustrated by them. But Reels are what Instagram is pushing because Instagram is pushing video really, really hard right now. And I know that Instagram reach has been really challenging for a lot of people. So this is a really good time to make sure that you are diversifying how you reach out to people, which social media platforms you use. Make sure, and you've heard me say this before, but make sure that you have that email list. Make sure that you are focusing on where you are finding your clients, your people, and spending time there. Basically, it's the whole thing of don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but social media version, right? But let's get back to how we use Instagram. So again, those 3 products, the feed, the stories, and the reels. Let's break them down and talk about how they fit into your marketing strategy. So let's start with the feed because it's the one that's been around the longest. In my experience, even when you use hashtags, I think the primary audience of the feed posts are going to be the people who already follow you and engage with your content. So when you are thinking about what to post, think about what those followers who are already following you need to see. And you may have heard me say something. You may have heard me say those who are engaged with your account. And those are people who are liking, commenting, engaging, doing some other action like even saving your static posts, which we were talking about, your reels, or even commenting or hearting your stories. That all causes those movements, those engagements, right? Those are engagements, those comments, those shares, those likes, whatever. Those are engagements. Those tell Instagram that that person wants to see more of that content. And this is how you can experiment. Go ahead and open your Instagram app and go to your stories, and you're going to see the little circles along the top. Those are your friends or the people that you follow who have current stories. What I want you to do is drag it like 10, 15 people past where you would normally look. Comment and engage on a couple of those posts, and I promise you within a day or two, you will start seeing those people's posts pop up in your feed because you are engaging with them and you are telling Instagram, this is content I care about, and Instagram wants to serve you content that it thinks you care about. So it's going to show you those posts, right? Either those stories are going to appear at the first part of that little line of stories, or you're going to actually see feed posts also. So let's talk about stories. Stories are pretty much a direct copy of Snapchat, or at least as close as Instagram can get it without violating any copyright laws. So stories last for 24 hours. There are filters, there are effects. You can add stickers, you can add a timestamp, you can add a question. You can do a lot of things in stories. Stories is a separate product. People engage differently in stories than they do on feed posts. Some people only engage on Instagram stories. They like the immediacy, they like the fun, they like the casual vibe. Some people never look at stories, they only look at the feed. Being in both places, sharing content that is appropriate to both places, means that you're going to hit both of those audiences instead of just one. So when you're thinking about stories, stories are temporary. They are a great way to take a quick photo. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a great way to do some quick videos, to ask your audience some questions, to get them to engage so they see more of your posts. And if you're wondering what kind of content to share, you can share your feed posts to your stories. That's a way to help it get seen. It's not super exciting, but it's definitely a thing I definitely suggest. But you can also share some behind the scenes, some thoughts that you're having, kind of off the cuff videos. Share a little bit about what you're doing that day, either through video or photo. Just add some content. And I recommend adding a couple of stories every single day. And that can seem a lot. I know it can seem like a lot, but one of the things that you can do is share other people's content into your stories, other people's feed posts into your stories, which is great because then you are supporting, especially if you're sharing, a friend's post or a business who you like, their post into your stories. That helps them add a little bit of extra reach. You can share memes, you can share other people's memes into stories. So I think that thinking of stories as temporary, as not needing a lot of thought, as kind of being kind of fun is important. It will really take a lot of pressure off if you think of them as something fun and temporary, and it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be super original. It just kind of needs to be there. So definitely, I think stories are really important. Which brings us to Reels. And I know that some of you have some feelings about Reels, and I am sorry if the feelings you have about Reels are crankiness. You are not alone. A lot of people really struggle with Reels. I think it's important to remember that Instagram does not have original ideas. And yes, I will complain about Instagram every chance I get because I think it's a silly app. But if you love it, I fully support your love of it. But going back to Reels. Reels is a copy from TikTok. TikTok as an app is blowing up. It is taking a huge market share, right, of people, of eyeballs, of attention, and Instagram doesn't want to lose that. The reason Instagram doesn't want to lose that, and this goes across any social media platform, we use social media. It is free to us. However, they take our data, they take how we shop, they take what we look at, and they package it and sell it to advertisers who then sell us ads. So it's important to remember that whenever we are talking about, why does a platform do this, or how can we do well on the platform, what does the platform need from us as content creators to make money? Because that's what they do. Social media platforms exist to make money. TikTok was taking market share from Instagram. It was taking views and eyeballs. So Instagram wanted to get that back. So it looked at what TikTok was doing in the same way that it looked at what Snapchat was doing. And it said, we are going to introduce our own version, but it will be just different enough to cover copyright violations. So Reels is, if you know about TikTok, if you've ever seen a TikTok video, Reels, the process is pretty similar. And it's a different product, right? It's different from Stories because it lasts for a long time. It's only video. Although you can turn some static posts into Reels, but those aren't going to do as well. It's different from our static posts, right? It's taller, it's a different size. And what is successful on Reels is usually pretty different than what's successful in Stories or is successful in your static post. So that's something to think about, is that these are 3 different products. These are 3 different ways of using social media on one social media platform. It is not a single social media platform, really. I don't think of it that way anymore. I really do think of it as 3 kind of like mini platforms within one platform: the Stories, the static posts, and the Reels. So earlier in this episode, I said that the people who see your static posts are probably most likely going to be people who already follow you. Your stories are also going to be people who already follow you or who are checking out your account that day for whatever reason. Reels, because Instagram is pushing them so hard right now, it is pushing it out to a bigger audience. So your Reels, a lot of times they're going to be seen by people who don't know who you are. That's your cold audience. They don't know who you are. They've maybe never heard of you before. So when you're thinking about the kind of content to use for Reels, we really want to think about that high level, engaging, eye-catching, kind of make them be curious, kind of whet their appetite to learn a little bit more. That's the purpose of Reels. That's how we can use Reels as a business to get more followers, to get more engagement, to get more interaction, and at the end of the day, right, hopefully get some sales. We are sharing top level, big picture kinds of information on Reels. We are doing more attraction focused marketing. So creating content around that perfect person that we want to work with. Even if they don't follow us yet, our goal is that the Reel will be fed to them, presented to them, shown to them. The other thing about Reels, and the thing that most people get really frustrated about, is that audio, that trending audio and that dancing and pointing that everybody thinks about when they think about Reels. It is still largely that, although it is kind of changing to where you can do some face to camera talking and explaining about things. I definitely suggest experimenting with both. Try something where you are doing the trending audio, you are doing something that is kind of what everybody else is doing. I know it's ridiculous, but a lot of times it is what works, and it works because it fits a formula. So think about what the formula is. What kind of information are they presenting? How can you recreate a reel that is similar that you like to create your own information? We also know that trending audio gets more views right now, generally speaking, than the face to camera just talking and explaining. That's kind of changing, and Instagram is saying that they're going to be pushing more original audio, meaning your own voice versus the trending audio, but we'll see how that goes. And I think that that is a direct result also of TikTok, because TikTok kind of does both. It does the trending audio and the things that, you know, if you're not on TikTok, the things that make it to your other social media platforms that make you laugh. Those are kind of what's trending, but then people are doing some really thoughtful and interesting sort of conversational pieces, and I think we're going to see more of that on Instagram also. But you only have 57 seconds or so on Instagram Reels. It says 60 seconds, but there's a little bit of a cutoff there. So think 57 seconds, not the full 60 seconds. When you create the Reel, if you're doing it and you're following the trending audio and you are using that audio, you're good. But what do you do? How do you get more views if you know that the trending audio does better, but you have something you want to say where you are actually talking to the camera? The best way to do that is to add a trending audio, but then turn the volume all the way down in the settings for the trending audio so that your voice is prominent. And what happens is it gets attached to that trending audio. So even though you're kind of burying, I think that's probably the best way to describe it, you're kind of burying that trending audio in your own voice, so that Instagram Reels pushes your content out in kind of the same way it would do the trending audio. Now, that doesn't mean that you can do that and then suddenly your views will take off, right? There are other nuances and other specific things that we need to do when we are making reels that I do not have time to get into in this podcast, unfortunately, that involve hooks and involve, storytelling and not necessarily transitions. It doesn't have to be fancy, but thinking about the storytelling aspect and the hooks and getting somebody to watch from start to finish is a really big piece of reels, and also TikTok if you're over there. But let's go back, because I actually got a chance to do a test on my own account and actually on somebody else's account also. So let's say I did a post, and I did do a post, but let's say this video is just me talking with no added sound, no trending audio, just me and my voice talking. That on my account got 115 views, which is still better than my static posts, let's be honest. When I reposted it about a week later and everything was as similar as I could get it, but I used a trending audio, I got over 2,000 views. And the only difference between the two is that one of them had a trending audio that was buried, one of them did not. But that, like I said, that doesn't mean that it's always going to go crazy for you. And I know that 2,000 views is not huge. It's not always going to work as beautifully as that. That's a really great example, right? Look at the difference in those numbers. But I did it with another video. The first video, again, was just me talking, no trending audio. That got 88 views. That was it. But when I added a trending audio and reposted it again, keeping it as similar as possible, that got me 116 views. So it's not always going to blow up your account if you use the trending audio, but it does give you a better chance sometimes than posting just where you are just talking. Eventually, Instagram will probably catch up with TikTok as far as that goes, but we're not quite there yet. And if we're talking about Reels, I want to talk about TikTok just a tiny bit. Even if you're never going to use TikTok, I do want to talk about it just a little bit, because I did the same experiment over on my TikTok. I did the same thing where I posted the video of me just speaking to the camera. It wasn't even a great video, honestly. There wasn't a catch. It was probably too long, wasn't super engaging, but it was information that I wanted to share. And sometimes I just like to share information because I want to share it, even though I know it won't do. It's not necessarily the job of that particular post is because I want to share information. It's not necessarily to blow up my account. TikTok can be really great for discovery, and I think it can be even better in a lot of cases than Instagram. And here is my little experiment that I did. So that video that I posted on Instagram that was just me talking, doing nothing fancy, that got 115 views. When I posted the identical video on TikTok, it got 405 views. Now, honestly, that's not a huge difference in the big picture, and I understand that. But I do think it is worth noting that my Instagram account is 7 times larger than my TikTok account. So my TikTok account got me more views, even though it is 7 times smaller than my Instagram account. I also did this with another post for another account that I have access to. So again, the first post was posted on Instagram. It is a speaking to the camera video. There was no hidden audio. There was no buried trending audio. Just speaking to the camera. That got 307 views or so after about 24 hours. On TikTok, it got 573 views. And again, that's not a huge difference. And I absolutely recognize that. But I do think it is worth noting that in this particular case, the Instagram account is 24 times larger than the TikTok account. This is a baby TikTok account. It's barely doing anything. But for this person, it's got more views. It got more interaction. It got more traction than it did on Instagram. So it's not that I'm saying leave Instagram. I'm just saying that what we need to do is really need to think about how Instagram plays into our marketing strategy, especially when we are thinking about it as 3 different products. So how do static posts play into your marketing strategy? What do your audience that already knows you, already knows a little bit about you, what do they need to see to want to see more? Stories. How can you use stories to get that audience that already knows you, is already familiar with you, at least on some level? What do they need to see for you to be personable, approachable, stand out, right? That's a really fun thing to do with stories, is to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more off the cuff. It makes us stand out, and it doesn't have to be pretty. I think that's the really amazing thing about stories, is that when we are using stories, it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be pretty the way our static feed does. And then Reels. Reels are going to reach people who probably don't follow you. So what kind of information do you need to share with that person, that audience that has no idea who you are? How can you be memorable? How can you stand out? And how can you present information in a way that is fast and engaging and gets them to want to learn more about you? Because if your reel does well and they connect with it, then they will go to your static post and they will see what you are posting. They will check out your stories. They will go to your link in bio, and that's where the magic happens. That's where that email capture happens. That's where your lead generation happens. But the reels are a really good way to get outside of your current audience. And that's really challenging on Instagram right now, other than using Reels. This is why I talk about Reels. This is why I help people with Reels. This is one of the reasons I've started giving my Adventures in Marketing members. Every week they get a new Reel to try with instructions and a trending audio and some ideas so that it is not another huge task for them to do. They have a formula, they can just follow that, and then they can move on with their day. That is kind of what I've been thinking about. The way that we use Instagram, I think, is changing. The way we use social media is kind of in flux right now. So I am really curious to know what you think. Let me know. If you want some kind of ongoing, low-level, helpful marketing support, come join my Adventures in Marketing membership group. It's $99 a month, and we do weekly calls. There's prompts, there's resources, and you have access to me when you need it, which I think is something that is really missing in today's world for small business owners, to have access to somebody who cares about their business, who understands who they are as a person, what their struggles are, what their personality is, what their business is like, and what their goals are, and then gives suggestions and resources and information based on that, instead of based on sort of something really general. So come join me. Thank you for listening. If you like the podcast, I would love it if you could leave a review. That really helps me. And please share this podcast with a friend. I'm not trying to be kept a secret. If you know somebody who needs business support and needs marketing information, share this podcast with them so they can get unstuck too. And I'll see you next time.